Craziest courtroom moments of all time. Part 2. A court of law is typically seen as a hallowed institution, since it is the place where justice and fairness are administered to those who have committed crimes. On the other hand, there are instances in which the courtroom is allowed to become soiled and defiled when blood is shed, and regrettably, lives are lost. Those who harbor resentment towards the defendants have the potential to inflict this bloodshed upon them. At the same time, the defendants can inflict it upon themselves. Putting that aside, please take a seat and allow me to welcome you to the place where war criminals are condemned. This individual is Slobodan Prijak, a Bosnian Croat who has been accused of 5 charges of crimes against humanity, 4 counts of grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, 6 counts of violations of the Conventions of War, and 4 counts of grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions. Prijak was a Bosnian Croat who served in the Croatian Army and the Croatian Defense Council, both of which were considered to be armies of the Croatian Republic, between the years 1992 and 1995. Before joining the military, he worked as a businessman, a television and theater director, and an engineer. He also directed television and theater. Prijak willingly joined the newly constituted Croatian Armed Forces after the commencement of the Croatian War of Independence in 1991. He gradually advanced through the ranks of the Croatian Armed Forces. As a result of the United Nations War Crimes Tribunal's investigation, it was discovered that Prijak had failed to make any significant steps to stop the rounding up of Muslims by his men during the summer of 1993, despite being told of the action. He also failed to take action on the information that murders were being planned, as well as attacks on members of foreign organizations and the damage to the city's properties. He had failed to act on all of these facts. It was alleged that Prijak, in his capacity as a senior military official, directed directly and indirectly the armed forces that committed mass war crimes against the Bosnian Muslim population in 8 municipalities in Bosnia and Herzegovina between the years 1992 and 1994. These crimes were conducted as part of a combined criminal enterprise. Because of this, he was charged with a crime in 4. 6 individuals were accused by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, ICT, and Prijak was one of them. It was on April 5, 2004, that he willingly turned himself in and was then transferred to the ICT. In his indictment, it was stated that Prijak, in his capacity as a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Defense, was intimately involved in all elements of not only the planning and operations of the military, but also the actions of the civilian police. This was the case in both the military and the civilian police. He later made an appearance in court and decided to defend himself without the assistance of an attorney. It was ultimately decided that he would enter a plea of not guilty to all 15 allegations that were brought against him. These charges included 4 counts of grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, 6 counts of violations of the customs of war, and 5 counts of crimes against humanity. The 4 most serious violations of the Geneva Conventions are the following: willful death, unlawful expulsion, transfer and incarceration of a civilian, inhuman treatment, extensive destruction of property, and appropriation of property that is not justified by military necessity and is carried out unlawfully. In the end, the trial chamber judgment handed down a sentence of 20 years in prison to him in 2013, and Prijak appealed the decision. Nevertheless, the trial that took place 4 years later returned a verdict of guilty, and even though certain aspects of his conviction were overturned, the court did not decrease the initial sentence of 20 years. First, let's listen to what the judge had to say. Prijak developed his plans. By taking this one simple action, he was able to reduce a sentence of 20 years to just 60 seconds. Prijak addressed the justices during the delivery of the appeal judgment against him, saying, "Judges, Slobodan Prijak is not a war criminal." Prijak was challenging the judge's decision. He dismissed their decision with a contemptuous attitude. He proceeded to consume what he claimed to be poison. As a result of the incident, the judge who was presiding over the case decided to postpone the hearings. The courtroom was designated as a crime scene by the Dutch authorities, who initiated an investigation into the matter. Following the preliminary autopsy, it was established that Prijak had poisoned himself with potassium cyanide, which ultimately led to the failure of his heart. An official inquiry is going to be conducted to determine how the poison was procured and taken into the courtroom after it was delivered there. Micah Pinter, Prijak's attorney, suggested that the individual may have committed suicide because he was unable to accept the fact that he was convicted of being a war criminal and that the deed had been prepared for a considerable amount of time. Because he was a fairly well-known character, his passing was met with a great deal of reaction from both the general public and the government. In addition to expressing its sympathies for Prijak's family, the Croatian government stated that the ICT had misled its officers during the previous decade. Andrej Panković, the Prime Minister of Croatia, remarked that Prijak's suicide was a demonstration of the profound moral wrong that had been committed against the 6 Croats who had fled Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Croatian people. Nearly all of the party caucuses that make up the Croatian parliament released a united statement in which they declared that the verdict of the ICT did not respect the historical truths, facts, and evidence, and that it was both unjust and unacceptable. In addition, Prijak's suicide served as a symbolic warning of all the verdicts that were handed down in the legal system. Their condolences were extended to the families of those who had been killed or injured as a result of crimes committed during the Bosnian War. Also contributing to the discussion was the President of Croatia, Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović. She sent her sympathies to Prijak's family and described him as a man who would have wanted to die rather than carry on with his life as a convicted criminal for crimes that he had not committed. Now let's go on to another courtroom, this time in Stockton, California, where an unexpected event occurred during the sentence of David Paradiso, who was 28 years old. Following the stabbing of his fiancée in the neck and the subsequent disposal of her body next to a road, Paradiso was charged with first-degree murder and 1 count of kidnapping. This hazardous individual, who was originally from Stockton and was currently on trial, had a criminal history that included offenses relating to drinking and drugs, as well as counts of vandalism. Throughout his adult life, he had already served more than 3 years in state prisons. The defense attorney for Paradiso, Charles Paco, stated that the methamphetamine that Paradiso was under at the time of the crime caused his mind to be affected. Although Paco did not dispute the fact that Paradiso stabbed his fiancée, he did state that he was not his typical self at the time of the incident. During his testimony, Paradiso stated that he had been under the influence of methamphetamine and was experiencing symptoms of paranoia when he stabbed his girlfriend, Eileen Pelt, who was 20 years old. Just 2 weeks into their relationship, he expressed his belief that she was going to kill him that night if he did not kill her first. He had been dating her for just 2 weeks. During the trial, Paradiso decided to defend himself without the assistance of an attorney. In response to the judgment handed down by the trial chamber, which determined that he should serve 20 years in jail, Paradiso filed an appeal. Despite this, the trial that took place 4 years later found him guilty. Even though certain aspects of his conviction were reversed, the judge did not decrease the initial sentence of 20 years. Let's have a listen to what the judge had to say. Paradiso had his plans. By taking this one simple action, he was able to reduce a sentence of 20 years to just 60 seconds. In the course of the declaration of the judgment of appeal against him, Paradiso addressed the judges and stated, "Judges, Slobodan Paradiso is not a war criminal." He dismissed their decision with a contemptuous attitude. He proceeded to consume what he claimed to be poison. As a result of the incident, the judge who was presiding over the case decided to postpone the hearings. The courtroom was designated as a crime scene by the Dutch authorities, who initiated an investigation into the matter. It was determined after an initial autopsy that Paradiso had poisoned himself with potassium cyanide, which ultimately led to the failure of his cardiac mechanism. Paradiso's attorney stated that the client may have committed suicide because he was unable to accept the fact that he was convicted of serving 20 years of sentence. If you've watched this far, Please share your thoughts in the comments box below for more fascinating subjects. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.